Let's turn now to the Council here in Article 7, Interim Agreement. It's the Council and the elections to the Council that will give for the first time the Palestinians a legitimate international status. The PLO had been a ad hoc organization that had achieved some diplomatic recognition in parts of the world, but was seen by large segments of the world, including much of the West, as a terrorist organization. The Palestinian Authority is a kind of state in waiting. In a certain sense, you can think of it as not unlike, in some ways, the Jewish Agency from the 1920s. Palestinian Authority will give a kind of governmental legitimacy, if you will, to the Palestinian people here, and will be the primary negotiating arm for future deals. Yasser Arafat will be part of this Palestinian Authority eventually. Its president. And so what we have here with the Oslo Accords are several things. One is the forming of a legitimate, internationally recognized governmental entity for the Palestinian people, the Palestinian Authority. In here it's referred to as the Council. We also have the repeated calls for withdrawal. Withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, withdrawal from the West Bank, and for some type of solution for the question of Israel. But as was the case in 1978, so will be the case here in 1993. This is not an issue that has been resolved yet. The Gaza issue, as we'll see here later in this lecture, was resolved in 2004-2005, however, only with great difficulty. You see, even though the 1993 Oslo Accords call for withdrawal from the occupied territories, call for a halt to settlement, this graph shows a very different reality on the ground. The number of settlers since 1993 has more than doubled to 260,000. This chart here ends in 2003 with 231,000. The number today is somewhere in the neighborhood of 260,000 in the West Bank. The situation has not changed. It's gotten much, much worse. So I guess in effect it has changed. It's changed for the worse. The Oslo Agreement was just the beginning of President Clinton's attempts to broker peace between Arabs and Israelis. He had brought Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat together in 1993, and the following year he brought Yitzhak Rabin and the leader of Jordan, King Hussein, a man we first met in the context of the 1967 Six-Day War. The year is 1994, and Jordan becomes the second country to recognize the right of Israel to exist. That was my phone going off, sorry. We don't have a piece of primary source evidence for this on the website. We'll just do it here. The piece is in certain respects similar to that reached between Egypt and Israel, except in this case Israel doesn't have to give up any of the territory it occupied. In fact, it's a recognition of, well, it's a renunciation, I should say, of Jordanian rights to the West Bank, a territory that it had controlled from 1948 to 1967 and where half of its population was located. It's a remarkable achievement, then, for Israel to achieve at least some kind of de facto recognition of its control of the West Bank and to achieve diplomatic recognition from a second Arab Muslim country. Egypt is first, Jordan here is second in 1994. Clinton was not finished, though, in 1998. The last of his major achievements here on the peace front between Israelis and Palestinians, bringing together, this time, a much more impressive achievement to bring a Likud Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who was first elected in 1996, to the table with Yasser Arafat. We have primary source documentation for this, and its primary source documentation that in some way reminds us very much of the 1993 agreement signed between Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat. Looking at this photograph, one interesting thing just occurred to me. Both Netanyahu and Clinton are lefties, and so is our current president, Barack Obama. How about that? Southpaws. In any case, what we see here in this Wye River Memorandum is our security concerns on the Israeli part, withdrawal concerns, transfer of control concerns on the Palestinian side, and a goal of 1999 for reaching final status. That unfortunately did not happen, because not long after the Wye River Memorandum here, things went south in Israel and Palestine. The Intifada, the second Intifada, began. Recall that the word Intifada means uprising, shaking off. The first had begun in 1987 in the power vacuum left by the departure of the PLO in 1982 after the Lebanon War. Largely spontaneous action caused by resentment, caused by harsh Israeli control of the occupied territories, living in a police state. And here in 2000, the root causes are virtually the same. There's a similar set of life experiences in 1999-2000 as there were in 1986-1987. The situation did not change.